Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Be Strong Families webinar series, Staying Strong and Positive for Ourselves and Our Children. I'm Robyn Harvey. I'm out in DeKalb. While everybody is logging on, if you could take the time to put your first name and the location and where you're coming from into the chat, that would be great. I'll start us out. Just make sure the chat's going to everybody. Hey, Levi from Quincy. We have Andrew here from Minnesota and Michelle from New Hampshire. Awesome. And Colorado, Lynn, welcome. And Yolanda from Tilton, New Hampshire, thank you. Brenda from Illinois. Hi, Brenda Marshall. I was just thinking about you. Jillian Andrews from New Hampshire. Welcome, Jillian. Again, this is the Be Strong Families webinar series, Staying Strong and Positive for Ourselves and Our Children. If you could just take a minute to put your name and your location in the chat so we can know who's in the room, that would be great. I always love seeing how far reaching the webinars are. We have Kara from North Carolina, and we have Donna from California. Kim's here from New Hampshire, lots of New Hampshire people. Great. Okay, Andrew, if you want to go ahead and flip over. So there's several ways to engage today. When you're ready to speak, please raise your hand and we'll ask you to unmute yourself. Feel free to type your comments in the group chat and make sure it's going to everyone. You can do that by pressing the down arrow and choosing everyone. Otherwise, it'll just be me and the panelists that get your messages. And then please be patient. We're going to try to get to everyone possible that wants to participate. Hi, Jennifer from Portland, Oregon. All right, Andrew, you can go ahead and... All of our webinars run on agreements. So the first one is speak from your own experiences using I statements. Tell your own story, not other people's. Number 2 is follow the golden rule. We're going to treat everybody the way we want to be treated. The third one is full presence. Please try not to multitask. Give yourself the gift of 1 hour of having really great conversations. And the last one, if you need a minute, take a minute. We realize there's lots of important people in the room today. If you have something that you need to attend to, please go ahead and attend to it and come back as soon as you can. If you agree with these agreements, can you please type I agree into the chat? And then once I see a mask there, we will go ahead and get started. We want to make sure that this place is co-created to be a safe and brave space to have really good, meaningful conversations. Thank you, everybody. I see all those agrees. That's great. Awesome. Thank you. And hi, Bridget and Corrine. I hadn't seen you guys. And Stacy. Hello. Welcome. All right, Andrew, you can go to the next slide. And hi, Hilda, nice to see you. So today we're going to have a really important conversation, and it's titled, Can You Hear Me Now? This is about amplifying undervalued voices. I am so honored that I have my friends in the house to talk with me today. Michelle, Kim, and Yolanda and we present together training people how to do Recovering Together cafes. For those of you who do not know, Be Strong Families has a card deck of conversation starters for cafes that are surrounding the vitality domains. Michelle, Michelle, you can pipe in because I'm going to say that you are from Archways, which was formerly Greater Tilton. Is that correct? Am I?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm representing that correct. Okay, so together with NET, which is a treatment center in Philadelphia, Michelle and a bunch of her staff at what used to be Greater Tilton, now Archways, got together with Be Strong Families, and we formulated some new conversation starters surrounding people who are on a journey to recovery and the people who love them. So the Recovering Together initiative at Be Strong Families is really a group effort with our partners at Greater Tilton and Archways and NET in Philadelphia. So I'm gonna just introduce myself And then I'll let our other three panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go back and talk a little bit more about the recovering deck before we get started. So I'm Robyn Harvey, and I have the honor of serving as the Director of Program and Training at Be Strong Families. I've been there about 12 years, involved in some sense through various means. But my greatest joy in life is being a mom. I'm a mom of 8 boys. A couple of them are married, partnered up. They have babies. So I also have 2 beautiful little granddaughters. I finally got my girls, and it's fun and wonderful. I live out about 60 miles west of Chicago, and I am super, super glad to be here today. Michelle, do you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Michelle Lennon, and I think, like Robyn, the biggest joy of my life is my kids. I have 2 boys. Our middle son is now living at home. My daughter is my baby. She's 19 and she's just finishing her last year of college. She's much smarter than me at that age and done really well for herself. And then I work as both a part-time pastor of a church and then also as the director of Archways. And it used to be the Greater Tilton Area Family Resource Center. We started in a church basement in Tilton, New Hampshire, but have grown to other locations in other areas. So that's why we changed the name. And I'm from Campton, New Hampshire, which is at the foothills of the White Mountains. And my connection to recovery has been a long one, both with my younger brother that really fights for his recovery daily. And then my husband, I would say the same, after an accident in 2009, when he fell off a roof 40 feet and survived the fall. And it's been a journey of pain management and surgeries and addiction, entering his brain. So it's very personal to me as well as part of my professional life. So I love being here. Thank you.
I had myself muted. Thank you, Michelle. It's always great to be in your presence. Kim or Yolanda, which one want to go first?
All right, I'll go. My name's Kim. I'm a certified recovery support worker here at Archways. I myself am connected to recovery because I've been in recovery for about a little over 3 years now. I've been through a lot of programs, or I could say institutions to get to where I am today. But I do believe that Archways had a great part of my recovery, and I'm really glad to be here today and to be talking about recovery. I'm also in school training to become a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. So a lot of homework. That's always fun. But like I said, I'm excited to be here and I'm hoping to hear some great stuff from you guys.
Thanks, Kim. All right, Yolanda, go ahead and round us out.
Thanks. My name is Yolanda, and I also work for Archways. I started off as a volunteer for AmeriCorps, and I later got hired at the center, which was Greater Tilton Area Family Resource Center, but is now Archways. I myself have 4 children and 2 stepchildren. I'm thinking 3 boys and 3 girls, 2 dogs who I absolutely adore. And my fiance. I'm getting married October 9th. I'm super excited. But I've kind of had my hand in this since Parent Café started, when the organization first started doing parent cafes. So I've worked with Robyn from Parent Information Center in Concord. So I'm super excited to continue working with Recovering Together Café and the cafes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And then we have Andrew Hitchcock, and he's off screen right now, but Andrew is our wonderful web tech support. So he'll be unraising hands and unmuting people and kind of just assisting us in having this conversation. All right, Andrew, you can put the slides back up. All right, so today we're going to be having this conversation utilizing the Recovering Together Cafe in a Box. And this is a complete box of cards and questions that uses the vitality domains as the foundation, the 6 vitality domains. So today our vitality domain we're using is the mental and emotional one. This is our health and well-being of our mind. Questions in this domain focus on our feelings and emotions, our mental capacity and our thirst for learning and knowledge, as well as mental attitude change, mental attitude changes that are needed to sustain recovery. So that's going to be the focus of our questions. And how this is going to work is Andrew is going to put up the next slide. There's going to be a question on it. Please, we're going to listen to some of our panelists answer the question, including myself. And then if you have an answer to this question, if you want to chime in, raise your hand. We'd love to unmute you and put you up and hear your voice. But if you're too shy or don't want to participate verbally, you're always encouraged to put the answers in the chat, and I'll go ahead and read those. Everybody ready to go? Awesome. Go ahead, Andrew, and put that first question up. So our first question is, how do you maintain or rebuild your self-worth after you've been dehumanized or made to feel less than? Who'd like to take a stab at this first off our panel? And go ahead, Kim. And the question is in the chat for everybody, just in case you need to take a look at it again or hear it again. Kim, it's all yours.
So I like this question. I'm in a couple of classes right now that I'm learning about the different models of addiction. And one of the people wrote about the moral model of addiction. And I think a big thing is understanding that it's like, for me, for addiction is that I didn't make all those choices just because I wanted to. Things were changing in my body and my mind that I did not have control over because of the substances, So first, me realizing that like I'm not the worst person on the world, helps me with my self-worth. And times after I've been dehumanized or made to feel less than, I think I definitely talk to other people. I share my feelings. I communicate about like what I do want to be treated like, what kind of respect I should deserve, because that helps me. And then also doing esteemable things helps me regain my self-worth. So volunteering, helping someone, just being nice, picking up a piece of trash, doing things that can give me that good feeling of doing well when I really don't have to. So I just thought of that off the top of my head when I saw it. Oh, you're on mute, Robyn.
Of course I am. Those are the best answers, Kim. I really love the answers that just come to us because they're so heartfelt and really like kind of shine they highlight our authenticity. Awesome. Who wants to go next?
So for me, what I've learned working at Archways is that there's multiple pathways to recovery. My way of recovery and my pathway is not necessarily Kim's or the next person who struggles. But for me, it's maintaining and rebuilding by staying connected with my spirituality, doing a 12-step fellowship program. And then when I have those dire needs where I feel a certain way, I make those phone calls, I reach out, I volunteer, I do service work. I try to give back what was freely given to me, as well as helping the organization I work for with the less than fortunate. And so that's kind of how I do my recovery and maintain to this day.
Yeah, thanks, Yolanda.
I was thinking the rebuilding self-worth part. I think a big part of that for me has been around getting educated, because I do feel like I was also programmed, like a lot of people, that people with substance use disorders either chose it for themselves or initiated it themselves, or somehow were to blame for carrying the disease of addiction if their substance use rose to that level. And I think, understanding the changes in the brain, I think was a big thing for me to kind of rebuild my family's self-worth, and to support my husband, because I can remember being so demeaned in an emergency room after an overdose experience. And, basically, the doctor coming over to me and like leaning over and like putting his hands in his lap and saying, "Your husband's an addict. Do you know that?" And I'm thinking to myself, in that moment, my reaction came from my education. So rather than getting emotional about it, although I was emotional on the inside, feeling the pain of that stigma, what I responded with was, if you mean, do I know my husband has substance use disorder because doctors like you prescribed him oxy-80s twice a day after an accident, and he developed the disease of addiction in his brain, then yes, I know that. And like in those moments, like trying not to react from emotion is so hard. But I do walk away from those situations where I feel like I've provided maybe a little education, so maybe they'll think twice before, coming at somebody like that. But also, the privilege of watching my husband work so hard for his recovery. He's actually going in for another surgery Wednesday. And just recognizing that, for me, like the Recovering Together cafes, it's another place where I find we can find that self-worth together as a family, because as an ally to recovery, like I can be with my peeps, in the same room and kind of recover together, which is part of why, like, I love these kind of questions, because we don't always have fellowships or meetings or places where we can come together as friends and family members, because, the world tries to, I don't want to say isolate somebody with this disease, but even the systems that people find recovery in tend to isolate the addiction health alone, and not look at the family behind somebody that can be such an asset or such a detriment without that education. So I think education definitely has helped me kind of reclaim that self-worth after being demeaned in multiple situations.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think of, little Nancy Reagan pointing her finger in the air, telling me in 5th grade, like, just say no, and making it seem like it was more of a moral failure or choice-based. And I had to do a lot of unlearning, and the Recovering Together process has really helped me help my family. Yeah, it's been great. Okay, Jillian, she wants to offer, I like to think that there is no such thing as bad people, just bad choices, and sometimes you only have to choose among only bad choices. Yeah, thanks, Jillian. Does anybody else want to comment on this question before we move to the next? All right, Andrew, you can go ahead and flip the slide. The next question is, how do you deal with stereotypes about your struggles? And this can be struggles of any kind. This doesn't have to be uber focused on the addiction or the journey. We can have it, because I believe that struggles are struggles, and anybody's tips can help in all kinds of arenas. So if you're interested in answering this question, raise your hand and Andrew can unmute you, or you can type your answer in the chat. But would one of you ladies like to answer this one first? How do you deal with stereotypes about your struggles?
For me, it's really been a learning process. Kind of like what Michelle and Kim were saying about the disease, and or not the disease, but we struggle here with substance use disorder or any kind of struggle with anything. And we have to reframe our mind and our thinking. So like there's going to be those stereotypes no matter where you go with anything. So you have to rise above it. You have to be educated, because when you're educated, you can have those tools that you need to move forward and not let it personally affect you.
Thank you. I think that's wise. Anybody else? How do you deal with the stereotypes about your struggles? I think for me, I had a lot of unlearning to do. And the more that I unlearned and relearned different things, then I was able to understand where other people fell into stereotypes or stereotyping. Like, oh yeah, I used to think that too, until I learned something different. And then so how I tend to deal with people stereotyping is I try to educate them. I used to think that too, and then I learned this, and now I believe this. And just trying to cast a wider light on something, because oftentimes stereotyping is really about using narrow opinions to judge a mass. Yeah, that's how I deal with them. After I get in my feelings and then get out of my feelings. Kim, did you have something?
Yeah, it's funny because I was just, when you were saying about helping someone be educated, I was thinking about person first language and about how much that can like really like cut away stigmatization and stereotypes. But I think like an important thing to remember is like not everyone is going to know as much as like we may know or someone else, like, you know, and helping them learn things or like maybe explain it to them in a kind like, you know, way is a lot better than getting upset, because it's so easy to get upset with people, especially when they don't understand, you know, they don't understand how someone can continue to pick up or do whatever it is, eat, exercise, whatever you're doing over and over again, if it's bad for you, especially, and if you're having consequences, you know? So like, even my mom still like doesn't understand, like, and she like, and it's okay because she's not, you know, she's not me. So I think learning that everyone has their own reality and thinks differently, and knowing that I don't have to base how I feel off other people's stereotypes. And another thing I thought of is there always are going to be stereotypes. Like really, regardless where I go, there's going to be something that somebody can judge about me, you know, and I have to learn to know that it's not my business what other people think about me. So
Yeah, that's a hard lesson though, isn't it, Kim? Like to let that go. Brenda Marshall's offering, I feel that if I'm being stereotyped, it's on that person who's probably struggling more than I am. I try not to take it personally, but it, in fact, feel sorry for that person. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, so,
I think,
oh, go ahead, Michelle, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think this is a tough one for me when I really get honest with myself about it, you know, because how do I deal with those stereotypes? Like sometimes I think I protect the reputation of my family by hiding some of what goes on. You know, not so much now, but I would say when things were really tense and my husband was very active in his addiction after a surgery, and we went through a lot, and the stereotypes, you know, that the hospital that we were dealing with, he had a dislocation, and they basically blamed his addiction the entire year of 6 dislocations. Never did a full leg x-ray to find out that the post in his leg had turned to the front. So it was like dislocating with every step. And like the stereotype was, oh, that's your addiction talking. You want more pain meds. That's your addiction talking. And so they never did the full x-ray. So he suffered like suicidal levels of pain for nearly a year, and everybody missed it. Everybody missed it. And he was complaining about it. We had a physical therapist that talked to him about how he whined more than her 90-year-old patients. We had talked to the surgeon about the clicking and the pain he was in, and it was, oh, it's got to graft in. It takes about 18 months for it to graft in. You know, went to primary care, and it was like antidepressants that, you know, so it was just like so hard. And you know, so you see those stereotypes, you know, impacting his care across the board. The thing that was so sad about the situation is both he and I thought the same thing, you know, that his addiction is talking. It's his brain as an organ, you know, sending false messages, or, you know, and that was like really tough, because when it came down to it, you know, I think our human nature is want to place blame, especially when so much suffering was so unnecessary because of that stereotyping. And so I think about those hard conversations that I haven't yet had with some of the people that have been responsible for his care, because it's like, I got to get over my anger for how much we've lost over the past 7 years because of what didn't happen, because they dismissed some of the things that we were saying as it's, oh, because he's an addict, you know, and I don't like hearing those words. Like, I do feel like when we label somebody like that, it really dehumanizes people. And I think about, you know, when I deal with the stereotypes, though, in protecting the reputation of my family, there are some areas where it's safe to disclose what my family goes through or what we've gone through as a family. You know, there are some people that will use it against us, you know, in this world. And there's still people that, even like when he was really struggling a couple of years ago, people like Yolanda, who was in his life, that would reach out to him and ask him how he's doing, while other people were like treating him like he was a pariah because he fell back in his recovery, you know. And when I think about dealing with those stereotypes, I think if I want to be like the politically correct person, I'd like to say that I try not to take it personally, But when people around me are attacked, it's a lot harder to deal with for me than when I'm attacked, for different things. And I do feel like if we don't understand like the stages of recovery, we can hurt a lot of people as allies. I kind of kid with Yolanda sometimes, like when her temper flares up, and we talk about that and in that emotional regulation and stuff like that, or just thinking about the different people in my life, how I deal with the stereotypes sometimes is remembering where they are and remembering the facts. Where is the brain and the healing? How has it impacted emotional regulation or executive functioning and stuff like that? And think about those moments when I get reactive, because I've been hit with something, and try to deal with that. And then I feel like I need to do something about them, so it's like, my husband and I have talked, before about talking to the clinic at the hospital that he goes to, because we've been asked by the surgeon, and we're not ready until you actually fix him. You don't want me in front of your students, and I think that self-introspection, one of the big things that I do is I see a counselor twice a month, a LADAC, who kind of helps me process through my own feelings. And I think on the other side of that, being an ally and staying with my husband, which I did through all of this, the other stereotype that I would say I dealt with was being an enabler. This idea that somehow providing a roof and food and clothing is somehow enabling somebody. And I think it's the basic necessities of life, sticking by somebody that you love. If you really believe that this is a disease, figuring out what the healthy boundaries are were super important. And we did put things in place that made it so I wasn't going to lose, my life or negatively impact my children, as much as I possibly could, like mitigating risk basically of, what damage could this addiction do. And we do a lot of safety planning in between, just having something come up. I think about the stereotypes, and then I think about how we have to be armed with education, and how important that really is to talk up front about what could possibly happen, and then what are the plans to deal with that. But to recognize the stereotypes happen because there's usually a kernel of truth in all of them. So it's like dealing with that head on is just something I think is hugely important too.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for being so open. Does anybody else have an answer for this question? How do you deal with stereotypes about your struggles? Yeah, I read that one, Andrew. Thanks. All right, we can go ahead and jump to the next question, Andrew. Question 3. What are some positive ways for you to deal with shame? I want to keep in mind the agreements, and if you want to contribute, raise your hand. What are some positive ways for you to deal with shame? Who wants to go first here?
So for me, shame's a big one, just because of the wreckage of my past. And so when I look at and I think of my shame, right, sometimes it can be, it can like put me in a state of mind that it's not healthy. It's not a good place to be, right? Because I can't do anything about what was done. I can't change the past. So what I try to do or the positive ways that I try to deal with shame is that, like, I'm grateful for the things that I have fixed in my life. So if I look at my beautiful children and I have a relationship with every single one of them today, whereas I didn't have a relationship with not a one of them back in probably 6 years ago or so, to be grateful and to think of those things. And like, yeah, there is shame that's attached to some of the wreckage of my past, but I've also fixed that. I fixed a lot of those things. And like, I try to remember that so that when I'm shameful, I can also be grateful and remember the things that I did to work towards maintaining those relationships again, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's, even shopping. Like I need a better relationship with shopping and food, right? So like, I try to learn to do those things. Like I'm shameful for like spending way too much money. And then I'm like, you know what? I went to the store today and I didn't spend anything. I'm so proud of myself. Right. So like I do things, little things like that to help me along the way, because there's going to be shame in no matter what we do, I feel like.
Yeah, thank you. What are some positive ways for you to deal with shame? This is a really hard question because shame is so paralyzing for me. When I feel shame, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to think about dissipating it. I just want to kind of disappear. I don't want people to see. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say there's two things that I try to do. One is I imagine, what if somebody else came to me with the same issue? You know, how would I treat them? How would I approach it? How would I ask them questions about what is the root of this, or things like that? Because I do think there are some things that we carry shame for because of things that people have done to us, maybe, or things that were outside of our control. Talking about the brain science of how addiction can affect the primitive brain, just thinking about how it causes people to do things that, on any given day, if addiction wasn't a factor, they'd never make those choices, just kind of thinking about some of that stuff. And how would I treat somebody else that came to me with that same issue? And if I'm talking to a friend who needs encouragement, like, can I look at myself and kind of take that third party view, I guess, and say, well, what would I give for advice, for something like this? Would I talk about making amends, or would I talk about thinking about the situation from another perspective, or some things? Because I think we all deal with shame on some level, what was the second thing? I can't remember now. I think that's a big one, though, is kind of like stepping outside yourself. And the other I was going to say, with my faith, plays a big part in how I deal with shame, because I just give the example of smoking was like such a big thing for me. It was such an iniquity. You work in, family support work, so like smoking is like one of the things we encourage everybody to quit, like first thing. It's so unhealthy. It's such an unhealthy coping mechanism for stress. We know this. And yet those of us who get addicted to nicotine, it's like you work at quitting like repeatedly sometimes, and I was thinking about how my faith played such a part in that, because I would say, I'm sorry for doing this again, while I have a cigarette in my hand. Hopefully my mother never sees this, right? There's my shame, right? But then, just thinking about how not condemning myself, like making a conscious effort not to condemn myself for it, and eventually getting there, and it's, people talk about progress, not perfection. But for me, quitting smoking is quitting smoking. It's either you do or you don't, so it's not about progress for me. It's like, when am I going to get to the end of this? Has been the thing. And that the shame piece comes from knowing better and still making a choice to do the wrong thing, or something that I know is unhealthy. And, my faith, there's something called that your body is a temple. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm doing a crap job of taking care of the temple, and how I use that for food and other things too, but going to the gym, my motivation. But I do think like my faith does play a big role in kind of dealing with shame, because there is that other sense that if I can't forgive myself, I'm calling somebody else a liar that says that they're quick to forgive. So it's like, how do I, hold on to that? So I kind of use my self-talk through my faith window to kind of talk me out of living in the consequences of those feelings, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. And Brenda says, that's amazing, Michelle. We should do that in so many situations. I think she was referring to like the talking to yourself as we talk to others, and how patient we can be with other people, and how hard we are on ourselves. I think a lot of us fall into that. Yolanda offered.
I was typing that.
Yeah, go. You want to read it out?
I was just saying that, like, sometimes if we think about how we would deal with it, if it was somebody else, like okay, so if like Michelle was saying, like if somebody else came to me with the same issues, I'd be easier on them than I would on myself. So if you kind of think about that going into it, you can, talk to yourself, have a little, not be so hard on yourself.
Good. I think that those are really great points to pull out of here. I think also, like, for me, when I feel shame, it spurs me on to do one of two things: either hide or do better. And I often think about how we can not hide and do better. Like, what are some ways that people can, turn that around instead of hide like we do? Sometimes we hide in the smoking, sometimes we hide in the shopping, sometimes we hide in the eating, or sometimes we just isolate and go quiet. And none of those things are like connection based. So for me, like, shame is isolating, and isolation is scary because lots of things can happen in this secret. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I was going with that. Those are stream of consciousness, I guess. All right, what about you, Kim? Got an answer for this?
I always think of like when I used to go to meetings and people would be like, put the baseball bat down. I'm like, oh, be quiet. Like, but I would have so much shame that I would shame myself back into using again, or shame myself back into doing something again, because I would say things to myself like, I'm such a bad mom, I'm not there for my kids, but like what I try to do now, which my a lot of like my therapy has helped me with, is like to change those thoughts. So like, I made a mistake, I wasn't there for my kids, but I'm here now, or whatever that is, to change those thoughts that come up so quickly, like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or whatever it is, because feeling that shame really, for me, it didn't let me get into recovery. I was so shameful. I was so hurt. I was so mad at myself. I couldn't forgive myself. And then one day I feel like the pain overcame the shame and I was able to, overcome. But dealing with shame is something that's hard. But I feel like for me, the best way is to journal about it, talk about it, acknowledge it, and like I said, try to change those ways of thinking into a better way of thinking.
And for me, like, the next part of that, Kim, is to share my story. To share, like, to shine light on it instead of putting it in the darkness. Because I think that when things are in the light and they're talked about, the shame for me dissipates. Because oftentimes when I've been able to be transparent and vulnerable and share my struggle, I don't hear a, oh, you suck. I hear a, me too. I dealt with that too. And that breeds that connection that I so need to dig myself out of that shame pit. Oh, that's a really heavy one, wasn't it? Does anybody in the audience have an answer for this one either? Or want to, get on with us? All right.
I was going to say, Robyn, that that one of the things that I heard from Kim that I do also do is see a counselor. I mentioned that earlier. For me, I was so beat up by some of my friends and family when we were going through some tough times. And I think too, because of my jobs, like there was this expectation, like, well, how can you stay with somebody that's actively using? And I'm thinking, how can I not? This is when he needs me the most.
Yeah.
But I think for people who don't understand the disease of addiction, and for people who have been, who have suffered the consequences of a loved one's addiction, because, the symptoms can be pretty harsh, for, the worst of it, is basically, trying to manage like the symptoms of it. People can do a lot of things they wouldn't normally do. And when you're the loved one, sometimes victimized by that, or watching it happen, or feeling threatened by the behaviors maybe outside the home that are happening, other people can see that and just feel like, why haven't you left him, or why haven't you left her, or why are you letting this happen, as if you have some control over it. And I think for family members who maybe haven't been educated and don't have the right supports in their lives. And, because people have good intentions when they're saying, leave your husband or leave your wife, they want to keep you safe. They care about you. They look at the consequences, but may not understand the whole big picture of, what does it mean to love somebody that carries this disease, and for me, like the counselor, and I also had an Al-Anon sponsor actually too. Having those supports was super important because, for me, like, and the Al-Anon was my tribe for a while, women who loved their husbands, who lived with addiction. And, I got so many good advice about how to protect myself and my kids from the symptoms so that I could stay and still be, in relationship with my husband, even while, the symptoms of addiction were active. And it's not easy, by any means. And I did all the wrong things in the beginning, trying to force solutions on my husband, making threats and, ultimatums and all the things they tell you not to do. But I didn't know that, my intentions were good. I wanted him fixed, that's kind of like how it was. And what I didn't realize until, having that kind of support, and it's like, I'm not up to me to fix them, it's just not. And so how I dealt with some of that shame was getting support from the right people that did understand, that could help educate me to set the healthy boundaries so that he was okay and I was okay, while we kind of walked through, what he was doing to sustain, sustaining his use until he got back into the right supports to move forward in his recovery. So that was a big deal, was having that professional help to get the coping mechanisms and the right boundaries. And because you do get blinded, at time about what is healthy, because it's so hard to navigate. And what I realized is how much worse it is for individuals with the disease of addiction to navigate the system because of those things like shame and stigma and stuff that operates within the systems. And then they beat themselves up too, and that's what I was seeing in my relationship is, just that desperation for, reaching out and then having your hand slapped and saying, has your wife left you yet? Which was one of the things that was said to my husband in an ER. So.
That's a rough thing. You said a couple of things that really kind of pricked my heart. One was, it's not up to me to fix them. I was a foster parent for a long time, good 20 years, and a lot of the kids that came through my house, their parents were on either a journey to recovery or they were in active addiction. And I remember having some really harsh thoughts about them in the early years and being really judgy, saying things in my head like they can't love their kids because, who chooses crack over their kids? And I really had to grow up, really. And I had to learn and unlearn a lot of things. Again, I was a child of the 80s. It was beaten to my head that drugs were bad, just say no. It's a moral defect if you become an addict. And, those I also was conditioned through my family of origin that way. And so me interacting with my kids' parents was really damaging to them and probably really damaging to the kids at times too. And I remember when I kind of flipped that switch, I'm an avid reader, so I read a ton of books, and I picked up a book about recovering from addiction, and that book changed me and changed my attitude. But then the shame set in, like, how much damage have I done already to these relationships? And I had to go back and say I'm sorry to a lot of people, and to act better and to treat people better, because that was what was right. Now I have really glorious relationships with the parents of the kids that live in my home. And I think back and I think, we've talked about this. Me and one of the mothers particularly have talked about the blame or the shame that she feels, and then versus the shame I feel. And we've just decided, like, proximity matters. Getting to know people for who they are matters, and forgiving ourselves for what we didn't know, and really striving just to be better. That's how I've dealt with shame, was really just saying, okay, that was the old Robyn, and she did make some pretty big mistakes in how she interacted with people. But now I know better and I can do better. And it's my like quest to always be stretching for that. That's why these conversations are so important for me. Like being around you three makes me want to do more, to be better. Not just to serve my own kids, but just, to help other people help their kids and do better. So I so appreciate you again. All right, Andrew, let's get that last question up. It's 12:45. We're going to end on a kind of a positive note here, everybody. So what do you need to let go of in order to make room for new and better things? And that's kind of a segue from what I just went to. I had to let go of a lot of ideas and beliefs that I thought I believed, but I had to really think, are they my beliefs? Or are they beliefs that were shoved upon me as a kid? And I thought that they were my beliefs. So that was one thing I had to let go of, was how my parents raised me in this arena and their ideas and Nancy Reagan's little ideas. And so that's my answer for that. What about all of you?
So I always say, like, when you know better, you do better. I love that. Right. So someone said that to me and it just stuck. So for me today, I always try to be the power of example to my children. And so like, it's interesting because it changes, not only myself has changed in my dynamic in the way that I look at things and the way that I approach things, but my children have also changed in their dynamic and the way that they speak to me and the way that they act and their goals that they're trying to set. Because, I tell them all the time, like, if I can do it, you can do it, and like, that's all across the board. That's like with being relatable to the participants that I see and my relationships and my family and my children. So that's what I'd have to say. It's just like being an example.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. Who else? I'd like to hear from some audience members too. So if you want to put something to let go of in order to make more room for the new and better things in the chat, that'd be great. Michelle or Kim, what are you guys going to let go of in order?
So I was thinking about actually the shame and the guilt, like having to let go of that to like make room, and like also letting go of the ideas like of judgment from everyone, and finally just saying like, this is what I need to do and I need to do it for me. Because my whole life doing things for other people and trying to be someone else for other people kind of led me to that whole freedom of using substances, which kind of made me feel like I can be whoever I want to be now. Like I don't have to worry about anything. And which wasn't true, but I think like little things like beliefs in my head, like I'm not good enough, like knowing that I am good enough to believe, but also, knowing that it's okay to have bad thoughts sometimes, but to make new thoughts and better thoughts and get those out of the way and also like new friends, new places, new people, getting those new things in my life to make room for better, like school. Like I had to get rid of some things, but then I started school. So good things are happening. And I think it can happen to anyone that is willing to put forth that effort.
Thanks, Kim. That's beautiful. And then Andrew said, I found I needed to let go of the need to feel right, to come out of conversations feeling correct, or that I hold the most knowledge. As I get older, I've often seen people with a lot of knowledge lack empathy and lack an ability to let go and learn more than they thought possible. Thanks, Andrew. And then Fatina said negativity that comes into one's day-to-day life that their own doubts and insecurities may cause. Yes, thank you. I'd love to hear from a few more of you. Michelle, what are some things you had to let go of to make room or are letting go? I always treat you like you've arrived. I'm sorry about that. But I know that you're.
Oh my gosh. On the way to work this morning, I was bawling my eyes out in the car with my husband. I have to let go of a lot of things in my life, I think. Even just building the center, I was thinking about how I had to let go of thinking like I was the only one that could do the job right. In all kinds of different areas. I had to let go of thinking I had to know everything. And I ended up eventually hiring like specialists to do things like invoicing and billing and Medicaid stuff, because I transpose numbers, it takes me an hour to figure out my mileage sheet, never mind, supervising 20 of them, you're just thinking of how I had to let go as we've grown, of the things that I wasn't good at, and really stop focusing on what I am good at and letting other people shine in the areas, where they're gifted and I am not, and some of that I think, is kind of like grasping some humility, and things, but also recognizing that we all have different gifts and talents. So I had to kind of let go of that feeling of I have to be in control of everything, I guess, like I've been able to let go of a lot of stuff. Like Yolanda runs pretty much the Recovering Together cafes. And what I really appreciate is people like Kim coming behind Yolanda as a teammate to make sure that Yolanda shines, by helping her with PowerPoints or whatever it is that might be her weak areas, and I'm not saying that those are her weak areas, but recognizing like, that's kind of how it works, is like that servant leadership style, I guess, that we try to hold on to as a culture, strength-based, holding on to those recovery values of person-centered and trauma-informed and all of that stuff. But I had been so hurt, I think, by so many different systems, navigating my husband's, recovery, just recognizing there are times when I have to let go of the past, because I recognize that even that doctor in the emergency room, that was so awful twice, first asking my husband, "How's your life?" That's all he said. He didn't ask him how he was doing, how he didn't offer any empathy about seeing him in the emergency room again with another issue related to his SUD. Nothing. It was like, "Has your wife left you yet?" And I'm thinking, but it's like, I got to let go of the anger that's directed at the person, because the person is not my enemy. It's the stigma and the shame and the conditioning that we have all had as a society, whether it's somebody in recovery or not. Because even within the recovery community, I just see like if somebody was able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, they think everybody should be able to, very often. And it's so not true when you understand like the brain as an organ, and that not everybody's problematic use raises to the level of addiction, but for those that it does, it's a primary chronic disease, going on. And we don't always, as a society, even understand that in the recovery community, it's funny that the anger that lives in me around that stuff does motivate me to do the work that I do. But it's very much tempered by recognizing that 99% of the people that we run into mean well, whether it's a child protective service worker going to take away some kids from somebody because they, saw a joint sitting on a table, and don't understand what the whole story is, or whether it's that doctor in the emergency room that could have said some kind words to my husband who is fighting for his life right now at that time. And we've also been, blessed with people that have been kind to him. Like a nurse was the one in that same setting that just told them he has so much to live for, and that, he should call him a handsome young man. I'm thinking he likes hearing that, but just the encouragement that he needed, after already feeling suicidal because he doesn't want to do this to his family. His pain was astronomical, and just recognizing that I have to let go of the anger that prevents me from reaching across that gap. As an ally, I'm listened to more in some situations, which really bothers me. But I think, in any position of privilege, in any relationship, we do have like this opportunity to step down from that place of privilege to be that voice in those situations. So I've had to like let go of the anger enough that I can have a healthy conversation to ask positive, generative questions of providers to kind of think about what does it look like really to operationalize trauma-informed care? What does it really look like to operationalize trauma-informed practice? What does it really look like to see the person is more than an object and only look at the addiction help and see them as a person. Because I was thinking about this because the surgeon that we've worked with for the past, 7 or 8 years, he's got kids. I'm like, does he understand that his mistake has led to my husband missing out on 7 years of our kids growing up? I mean, does he realize that? Or is it just a slab of meat on the table that he's plugging another part into? And I do think for all of us that work in this field, that there are times where we just put our emotions up on a shelf and forget, that it's more than setting goals with people, that we're privileged to be invited into people's lives, and sometimes seeing them at their worst and then seeing them grow into their best selves, which is such an awesome privilege to be part of for me. But also letting go of any idea that you're somebody's savior or blame, I think is another thing that I've had to let go of in order to welcome good things, because we do see loss, in working with people in this field. But it's like, I spent the weekend, kind of taking that stuff off the shelf and looking at it, because we did lose somebody last week that was pretty special to us. And kind of remembering the good things, and the privilege of being involved in their life for a length of time and getting to see them grow in so many different ways. And this particular kid, like, he ended up doing like missionary work for a church and reaching out to homeless individuals in a community, and just like kind of like amazed at where he grew to, I guess, which had nothing to do with us. We were just there for a season. And I think about the letting go of, ownership of anybody else's recovery, except for our own, just has been a thing and a part of what I had to realize. Otherwise we burn out, way too fast doing this work if we kind of hold ourselves up as, anybody's savior or anybody's reason for dying. That's been a big thing. And then it does offer the opportunity for good things to come in, the good memories, the successes we get to see in people's lives, and all of those wonderful things we see recovery bring to people. And, just thinking about my own family, like, we are really hoping this is it for my husband, that he is never going to look back after this next surgery, because supposedly now everything will be fixed. But it's not me doing it. It's a surgeon.
That's right. That's right. We're all with you, Michelle, for sure. And thank you so much to all three of you for sharing so much. Just 3 last comments here. Brenda Marshall said, I need to forgive myself for the way I fostered starting 35 years ago. I didn't know then what I know now. You and I both, Brenda. There was never any mention of trauma then, but it would have changed so much. Looking back, I did so many things wrong. And now you're doing so many things right, Brenda. Bridget said, the day you planted the seed is not the same day you eat the fruit. Give yourself time to do things and develop your strengths. I think that's beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you, ladies. Andrew, if you want to go to the next slide.
There was one more comment there. I don't know
there
that
was?
you saw it. Yep. From Corrine. Is that right?
Oh, yep. It was just further down. Letting go of the negative voices that enters in daily and replacing with positive confirmation. I am good, working on getting better. I love that, Corrine. Thanks for offering that so much. Okay, Andrew, go to the next slide. So we always end our webinars with a little poll here. So if you can just take the time to answer those 2 questions and then put up your hashtag. So today we are amplifying, can you hear me now? Bringing marginalized voices into the center, helping people who are often ignored be heard. So amplify, can you hear me now? Andrew says, amplify learning from my mistakes. Thank you, Andrew. And let's see, and I'm gonna do amplify grateful. I am so grateful for this conversation today and the way all 3 of you share your life so fully with this community. I appreciate it so much. Okay, Andrew, go to the next slide. Amplify recovery. Thank you, Michelle. Amplify grateful. Thank you, Donna. So this Friday on the 16th, we have a taste of Café. Show me the money, moving from not enough to more than enough. Our awesome national parent leadership team will be hosting that. So if you can join us, please do. Next slide, Andrew. To register for upcoming webinars, you can capture that QR code or that link that Andrew has put into the chat. Next slide. Is the last one is the Be Strong Family Shop. So there's cafe, parent engagement, parent cafe supplies, engagement supplies, all of those things. And the last one, if you are not part of our YouTube community, please join us. This video will live there along with all of the other videos that we have. So I am not used to it going right up to 1 o'clock and being out of breath. That means it was full of information and full of just excitement. I'm so honored to have all three of you give us 1 hour of your lives. Thank you so much. We can't wait for the next conversation. And I think the next time we'll see each other, I'll be with you in New Hampshire. See you guys. Have a great day.